surreptitious recording.
Gonzalez case.
When I asked him about that back in 2019, this is what he had to say.
It's a tough world we live in.
It's a tough world. It's a tough world we live in. That's right. It's a tough world. The ComEd 4 case is heating up as the witnesses are taking the stand, and they had 3 former state lawmakers take the stand, one being a former leader, Lou Lang, another, Carol Sente, and a third being somebody in the Democratic Party who bucked Madigan, Scott Drury. And I remember talking with Scott Drury in detail. He wanted to really challenge Madigan's power and raised serious, substantial concerns back when he was in the legislature as a Democrat. It even got to the point where Drury, and this doesn't necessarily have to deal with the ComEd 4, just an interesting anecdote. Scott Drury, who's a former federal prosecutor, he actually had cast a no vote for Madigan. He did not vote for Madigan to be Speaker of the Illinois House whenever it came up at the beginning of one of the General Assemblies. And Madigan gave a custom clock to every Democrat except for Drury, which, the rationale was, well, he didn't vote for Madigan, so why should Drury get a clock? That just is, I guess, in a way, the very top surface level of how Madigan ruled at the Illinois State House. And what was talked about yesterday in federal courts up in Chicago in the charges against 4 Madigan associates in the ComEd bribery scheme that prosecutors allege lasted nearly a decade. They got even more detail about what exactly was Madigan's management style. So pretty fascinating to see, again, Mike Madigan not on trial this week. His trial is next week, but the 4 individuals, Mike McLean, a close confidant of Madigan, and Majoria, the former ComEd official. You've got a Jay Doherty, and also for some reason the other one's John Hooker. There you go. So 4 individuals facing trial, and they had witnesses on the stand. So the 3 former state lawmakers testifying, and just some of the takeaway is that they highlighted how Madigan managed the legislature and leadership positions as well. Lou Lang, for instance, he was a top Madigan lieutenant and really advanced things on Madigan's behalf. And you got an indication in court as well of Madigan's voice being caught on recordings. Again, here's Madigan talking about how it's a tough world and being caught on surreptitious recordings. Pretty fascinating. Again, I asked them about this back in 2019.
Also had a moment caught on some kind of surreptitious recording. Can you respond to this?
It's a tough world we live in.
So what was played yesterday in court? Let's go ahead and hear that. It's about 3 minutes or so, but it's a phone call that Madigan had with Mike McLean that somehow the feds have now as evidence. So here's that phone call.
Hello.
Hey, Speaker Mike McLean.
Mike, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
How are your calls going?
Oh, they're fine, Mike. Yeah. So, yeah. I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 that have not committed. And of the 8, there's 3 of them I know they're going to be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 of them would be Flagenholtz, and Christian Mitchell will be fine. And Bob Rita.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Right. Nobody has said no.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody has said no. So my count now is right around 60. As an example, Kelly Burke and Deb Conroy, they just said yes right away.
Sure.
And then there's Ann Williams from that crowd. So it's in very good shape.
Good.
Good shape.
Good.
And go from there. Mike, where are you?
I'm at Quincy, Illinois. We're interviewing the finalists for the next president of Quincy College, and so Quincy University, and so I'm the search chair for that. So
Yeah, right. So listen, I'm calling because you sent a note that the matter the matter of PTAB over a J car.
right,
It comes up again November 13th,
that's correct.
and it's a Tuesday. So I had a thought that if Rauner loses, maybe John Bradley, is the lobbyist for those guys, should go over and talk to the chairman of PTAB.
Right.
And tell the guy, there's going to be a lawsuit, there's going to be depositions, and you're going to be asked, did you take directives from the governor's office, which is contrary to how the statute reads. You're supposed to be independent.
Right.
So why don't you withdraw that thing?
Mm-hmm.
Get yourself out of trouble.
Yep, will do.
Okay. Very good.
Yep. So I was going to call you anyway. I was going to wait. I thought today's not a slow day for you, huh?
It's been crazy around here.
Has it? Okay. So when do you want me to call Lang and just lower the boom on him?
I think sooner.
Because he's not getting it.
Oh.
I mean, he understands it, but he doesn't like hearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Sooner rather than later.
Okay. I'll do it.
Now, Mike, I presume that there's this one woman who has allegedly told Lang that if he gets reappointed to leadership, she's going to go public.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get that confirmed that she made the call. Heather's the one that told me that. And so Heather has called her again yesterday, but she's walking out in the suburbs for one of our candidates.
Okay.
So she's not answering her phone. But as soon as I get that confirmed, I'm just going to flat out tell Lou I know about this call. I want to confirm that call's been made.
Yep. Yeah, I would say sooner rather than later.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Lowering the boom, making the calls, counting people up. It's really fascinating, quite frankly, to hear that. And that's just one of a series of phone calls that were recorded that is entered into evidence of the ComEd 4 trial. And again, all four of the ComEd 4 have pleaded not guilty. Madigan himself has also pleaded not guilty. But the outcome of the ComEd 4 trial very much is going to impact how Madigan's treated in the spring of next year when he goes to trial ultimately. So a nearly decade-long bribery scheme being discussed and evidence being brought forward and witnesses being brought forward, including former state lawmakers. We'll go through some of what they had to say in court yesterday, so stay tuned. It's here with Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on WMAY. And again, to Speaker Madigan, what's it like being caught on surreptitious recording? He says it's a tough world we live in. All right. It's Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on WMAY 649, and stay tuned. Much.
It's been crazy around here.
Has it? Okay. So when do you want me to call Lang and just lower the boom on him?
I think
because he's not getting it.
Oh.
I mean, he understands it, but he doesn't like hearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's Mike Madigan talking with Mike McLean back around the Me Too era, where you've got the audio played in courts for the ComEd 4 trial, highlighting how Madigan ultimately manages things. And there was an effort with the Me Too movement, the sexual harassment allegations that were spreading all across the country, especially in the halls of power, even at the Illinois State House, where Lou Lang was encouraged to stave off a potentially new sexual harassment scandal. If you recall that, I remember covering that very closely, and it was rather telling as to how that was handled. Even the legislative inspector general getting involved, and Lang putting out there that there was no findings, even though the legislative inspector general wasn't allowed to release such findings. So interesting to see how all that played out. But Lang was just one of three former state lawmakers that testified yesterday in the Madigan trial. And then you have also the lawmakers that were there testifying. Carol Sente, she talked about how Madigan was questioning her about her lawmaker term limit bill. You also, again, had Lou Lang testifying, but also Scott Drury, a former state lawmaker who did not support Madigan, testifying on how he was essentially frozen out of the legislative process after he, as a Democrat, didn't support Mike Madigan to be speaker. So this is just, one day of evidence that the federal prosecutors have brought forward against the ComEd 4. Mike McLean, Ann Pramaggiore from ComEd, Jay Doherty, a lobbyist and consultant in the former City Club of Chicago lead, and John Hooker, a ComEd lobbyist. And the allegations are that they gave Madigan Associates little to do nothing jobs for good pay in exchange for having the legislature craft favorable legislation, be it allowing for ComEd to work in different rates and getting bailouts and a whole host of other things. So it's going to be weeks and weeks and weeks of this, right? So you're going to have the prosecutors lay out their case, call witnesses. What'll be interesting to see is if any of these witnesses get cross-examined by the defense and McLean and the other three who have pleaded not guilty, by the way. And again, Madigan's not on trial right now, but he obviously is the center of it because he's going to be facing charges next year in court where he's pleaded not guilty. But it's this trial which is really going to be determinative of what happens with Mike Madigan. But Madigan's voice heard in court yesterday, and just really fascinating to hear that conversation going back and forth.
So I was going to call you anyway. I was going to wait. I thought today's not a slow day for you, huh?
Oh, it's been crazy around here.
Has it? Okay. So when do you want me to call Lang and just blow the boom on him?
I think
because he's not getting it.
Oh,
I mean, he understands it, but he doesn't like hearing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. Sooner rather than later.
Okay, I'll do it.
Now, Mike, I presume that there's this one woman who has allegedly told Lang that if he gets reappointed to leadership, she's going to go public.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get that confirmed if she made the call. Heather's the one that told me that. And so Heather has called her again yesterday because she's walking out in the suburbs for one of our candidates.
Okay.
So she's not answering her phone. But as soon as I get that confirmed, I'm just going to flat out tell Lou I know about this.
That's incredible. We'll be back with more.
SPI Studios. Take the